Well, are you ready? Are you ready? I heard that you wanted to look at the Sicilian. I feel like I don't really want to play with or kind of show you e4 with the white pieces because I'm not that good at it. I don't play it myself, so I feel like there's probably gonna be somebody that's better at showing you that than me. So because I play Sicilian, do you want to look at some openings with black, and then we can kind of go through how you play them, why you play those moves, and so on. Okay, so I'm just gonna play with the white pieces, and you just play whatever you would want to play in the opening.
Okay, so yeah, as long as you don't play d4. If you play d4, I don't think I can play the Sicilian at that point. It changes everything. So if you play that, I play c5 straight away.
Good.
Normally.
That's the Sicilian. Awesome. Yes. Okay, so c5, and then knight f3 is the main move in this position.
Okay, I would normally here play. There's a few moves here I can play, but I would probably just play knight to b6, c6. Sorry.
Yes. No, that's a good move. Just like you said, there are a lot of different lines to play, but I think that this is the most solid one and the one that you should go for. So I like that. I play this myself as well. The idea of going knight f3 as white, just so that, you know, that yes, it's for white to go d4. White always wants to go d4 in the Sicilian because that's basically the only way for white to break the center.
Yes. And then if you were to play d4 here, I would probably just take with my pawn that I've pushed.
Exactly. So we want to go d4 to break the pawn, or to exchange the pawn that you have, your central pawn. And this is the main move here. Pretty much everybody goes d4 in this position.
Because isn't this now the Open Sicilian?
Yes, this is now the Open Sicilian. So the Sicilian is always open if white goes d4. Then if they go d3, then it just becomes a whole other type of position.
Okay, because I would always take that because obviously you've got the pawn duo or whatever it is in the center of the board. If I don't take also, my pawn on c5 is currently hanging at that point unless I push the other one. So I would almost always take if you've got the two pawns next to each other.
Yeah, you've got to take at that point. You've got to take it. Also because otherwise, just like you said, that this pawn is hanging and this center is very strong. So you gotta take the pawn on d4. And then we take back.
So here, I wouldn't take the knight because obviously your queen just comes in and I have 0 development. So I wouldn't actually take that. Here, I would either play probably e6 or I would play g6 if I wanted to get the bishop fianchettoed, or I could play knight to f6 attacking the pawn. So I think that knight to f6 would probably be the best move here.
Yeah, so just like I said, there are a lot of different moves and it's actually just preference what you play at this point. There's no move that's better than the other. So all the 3 moves that you just mentioned are actually different theory lines. So it's really just a matter of preference. You can either play g6 here. This is called the Accelerated Dragon. And the reason why is, okay, I don't know if that's the reason, but I kind of feel like it looks like a dragon tail when you get the bishop out here. So this is the dragon. And then there is knight f6, and typically the knight f6 ideas, this move is actually very flexible because you can either go g6 or e6 after. So knight f6 could be a good move. And in this position, yeah, so we said that this is wrong. So they gotta go knight c3 to defend this pawn here.
Yes. Yeah. And then here, what I would either play, again, it comes back to that move, would either be g6 if I was going to play bishop to g7, or I would play e6 potentially to prepare d5.
Yeah. So g6 in this position is actually a bit of a mistake, even though it doesn't really look like it. But if you want to go g6, you have to go d6 first if you want to go for that plan. And the reason for that is that if you go g6 now, in this position, white can take on c6, and after you take with the b pawn, then there's going to be e5, and you don't have this check anymore.
Oh, okay. Yes, I see that. Because the knight obviously blocks, which means I'd have to move the knight again.
And I mean, then you gotta go knight g8, and that's kind of sad.
Yeah, okay. But then you play d6 first, because the bishop covers the g4 square, which you could move the knight to.
The reason why you go d6 first is because then you're covering the e5 square. So then, if you go d6, and there is, I don't really know, there is some bishop e2 or something, and you go g6, now there's not going to be this knight takes, pawn takes, and pawn up, because the pawn is just defending it.
Okay, so therefore I wouldn't be ever, at this point, do I not, because I've seen another line of the Sicilian where you play e6 to prepare d5. Does that just kind of, at this point, you just don't play that?
Yeah, so this would be a different setup. So it's actually just up to you what you want to look at. I play e6 myself, but d6, g6 is also like a good opening. So what do you want to look at?
Probably look at the d6 one, because if I was to play d6, preparing to get the bishop out. If this knight ever did get attacked, or I had the ability to trade off the enemy's dark squared bishop, I would take that, because then this bishop becomes really difficult to get rid of. So that's probably what I'd play.
Exactly, and this bishop on g7, it's going to become a very strong bishop in this diagonal. So it can be really fun to play. Also, I feel like after e6, there's a lot of tactical lines. So I think it's more solid to play d6, but we can look at e6 as well if you'd want to. But let's start with this. So d6, and here I think that the best move for white would be to go bishop g5.
So here, I'm not really under any threat. You could trade off the piece. If I was to play g6, you could just take the piece, and then I'm forced to basically take with e7, which I don't know if that would just be ruining my pawn structure. So now in this position, I think h6 isn't good, because you can just go back, I think.
Exactly. h6, you just go back. And g6, then, just like you said, it kind of ruins the pawn structure. So that's why this move is so strong. This is the only move that prevents the whole g6 idea. So if your opponent knows that you're going to play g6, then they might go here. And this is a really annoying move. So in this position, the best thing would actually be to just go e6 and to just, you know, defend with the queen and the bishop. But it depends if you like this, because if you feel like this bishop g5 move could be really annoying, then, you know, maybe going e6 first could be better. So, but I mean, there's not really that high of a possibility that your opponent actually goes bishop g5.
Would there be any, why e6 over e5? Is there a reason for that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So going e5, the reason why this move is not so good in this position is because you're giving away this d5 square.
Oh, so the knight could jump forward because my knight's actually pinned, so then it's attacked twice.
And that becomes an output for the knight. There's not going to be any pawn that will ever be able to remove this knight. We don't have any c pawn, and the e pawn is already advanced to e5. So this knight is going to stay on d5 forever. I think that a good rule of thumb is that whenever you move your pawn, whenever you move any pawn, was this an important pawn? Is this pawn not going to be able to defend any important square? And then when you go e5, then you can kind of see, okay, we have a big square here on d5. There's also a really big square here on f5 where this knight could jump to, but now there's this bishop here. But so e6 is just kind of a move that controls all of these knight jumps.
Yeah, I see that, because I feel like that's exactly why I'd play e5. My mindset would be, I'm hitting this knight. It might force the trade, which is fine. But then obviously after I force the trade, the knight on c3 could jump into d5. And that is not a place I want it to be, because my other knight would be attacked twice then.
So yeah, e6 here would be better. And all right, I'm not really sure what white could play here. I think it makes sense to just bring this bishop out. Yeah, I don't know. f3 is a move, bishop d3 is a move, bishop e2 is a move. There are a lot of moves here. I'm just gonna play a random bishop e2 move.
So in this situation, again, you're the knights can't jump forward, so I think I'd go back to development. But again, if I push another pawn, am I now preparing this fianchetted bishop? Because as soon as I push the pawn, this is only attacked once, so the queen would defend it. So I could probably now push this pawn to g6.
So actually, whenever you have pushed your e pawn, you don't want to push your g pawn, and that's kind of just a rule of thumb in the Sicilian. So we are starting with seeing what happens if they go bishop g5. I know I said that we're going to look at g6, but this is the only line when you cannot play g6. We'll look at g6 if they play any other move than bishop g5. But the reason why you don't want to go g6 when you have gone e6 is because now there's like the squares just become very weak. There's no pawn that's defending this knight anymore, basically. So the dark squares, you just become very weak. And also when you're placing your bishop on this diagonal, this pawn on d6 all of a sudden becomes very weak. So if the knight would ever jump to b5, then this pawn on d6 would be hanging.
Okay. Because it's only defended, well, it's defended by, that's if the bishop moves on to g7, because it's defended by the queen, but obviously a queen defending a pawn's not going to be there the whole game.
Exactly, and then it would be attacked by the queen and the knight. So if the bishop moves away from the defense of this pawn, then this pawn is going to be very different. And that's the difference from if the pawn is still on e7. If the pawn is still on e7, then this is fine, because you're just going to be defending this pawn forever with another pawn.
Because does the sequence of moves matter? Because what if I've already played g6 and then they play the bishop to pinning the knight? Because then obviously I wouldn't be able to play e6, sorry, defending the knight, because I'd have nothing defending the knight at that point.
We can look at it. So let's say that we would go bishop e2. Now if you go g6 and then they go bishop g5, now you can just go bishop g7 and defend the knight with the bishop.
Okay, because yeah, it was going to jump, because now I don't need the queen anymore, do I? Yeah, I see that. Because in that position, I wouldn't be. Yeah, because I wouldn't push e6 at that point to defend with the queen, because I could just have a developing move that would defend, which would be better.
But that is why it's only when they go bishop g5 that you have to go e6. Otherwise, you go g6, and we're gonna look at that after. But okay, let's just see this. So yeah, we're looking at bishop e2, and what would you, if you don't play g6, then what would you play here?
I would either develop my dark squared bishop or light squared bishop, and I'd probably develop the dark squared bishop to e6, which adds another defender to the knight, but I can prepare castling kingside.
Awesome, yes. Gotta develop, and typically developing the pieces that are close to your king are the most important to develop quickly if you're gonna castle that way, because you need to get your king out of the center pretty soon. So bishop e7 is a great move here.
And this would be, yeah, I'd almost be preparing to castle on the next move. So if the enemy castles now, I'd probably just castle as well.
Exactly. I love that you call the opponent the enemy. Castles and castles. Okay, so I think that we've looked quite a lot at like this line. So let's then see what happens if they don't do that. So bishop e2 is a move that makes a lot of sense. I'm gonna go bishop c4 just because it looks a bit more scary. It's not more scary, but it looks more scary. So I'm just going to play this one instead.
If I was studying this, I'd quickly look and I'd see that this is now, again, the f7 pawn's quite weak. It's attacked once, but it's defended by the king, so it's no problem. But I've got to look out for a potential threat like this, but my knight's blocking it. So even if I was in this position, I wouldn't need to think much about my next move. It's just checking that I'm not about to throw a piece by mistake. So I would probably play this at this point, because I don't think there's anything wrong with it.
Exactly. You just go g6. Now there's no bishop that can take this knight. No pawn structure being destroyed. You just go on with your plan. So here I think it just makes sense to castle.
So if you castle here, I'd prepare my own castle and get my bishop fiancóed.
Yep. Okay, typically white would go bishop e3 just to have one extra piece that's defending this knight. And I'm going to show you now another idea. So actually now, let's say that we go rook e1. It's the best move here.
So I think my next move is something to do with just moving the bishop or the queen.
Yeah. So those are perfectly good moves. I just want to show you one thing. Is there any way here that you could put an attack on two pieces at the same time?
This would hit two, but that'd be rubbish. That wouldn't work. I won't go for that one. I've got to, if I push the E pawn there, I've got to fork on the two minor pieces, which is probably a decent move. And this is defended 0 times. That's defended once by the queen, attacked twice. So I'd actually be attacking this twice and attacking that once. So I think I just go for the pawn fork on e5.
And yeah, what I wanted to show you was just how can white defend from this? So this is actually a double question. First, what's the fork? And then how can white defend from it? Because I think it's just good for visualization to just see this type of ideas.
This one initially is going to come with a tempo because the queen can't take back. So it might be something to do with this. So you would probably then initiate the trade on this knight, get that out the fork. I then have the choice here to take back on either of these. But obviously this one's attacking the queen. So that would be my next move. And then this bishop, you can move it to possibly here and put me in that pin from before.
Exactly. So here you would be able to save the piece. But is there then any other way here that you could do the fork but stop knight takes c6? So you could actually make a proper fork where you're winning one of the pieces.
Like that. It's defended by the queen. Queen takes.
And then you go e5.
Yeah, because now, again, the queen has to move. And there's no real good move here. You could maybe... Because again, I don't know if you wanted to be capturing back there, because the only good move I can see here, this is completely hanging. So I'm just going to win it, and the pawn will just be there. So I think you'd either play one of those, or either that or that move. So that when I take, because it's gone, you could maybe take there. But I don't know if that gets you into more trouble.
Exactly. So, I mean, it doesn't really exactly matter where the queen goes. Because once again, what matters in this position is the fact that you're winning a bishop. You're exchanging one pawn for a bishop. And the pawn is worth a lot less than the bishop. So... you wouldn't have to spend time here thinking where the queen goes, but you just say, okay, you know what? I'm gonna be winning a bishop. And that's about it. And that's really good. So here you would just be a bishop up. So I just wanted to show you that sometimes, even though something looks like it's a fork immediately, you have to kind of think about what your opponent would do against that move. And here against the move that seems to be a really good fork, e5, the opponent would have this resource to save the piece.
Yeah, so if I ever see that fork, you don't immediately play it, because again, I have to ask myself, what are these things attacking? But yeah, in the fork, if anything's attacking another piece, eliminate it, and then play the fork. Because if I, like, in a game, I might see that fork and get really excited, then he does that, and I'm like, oh, and then it gets away and I don't win anything.
And that's why in the checks, captures, and attacks, captures is before attacks. You first look at captures and then you look at attacks. This is an attack. This is a capture. There's no check in this position. This is a capture. You first look at the captures always, pretty much. And that's why it's in that order, because captures are always more forcing than attacks. Yeah, so I mean, if you ever want to, you know, continue looking at this or whatever, I'm here, and you can always message me as well about it, just so you know. So I really hope that you feel like this worked, or that this improved your Sicilian a bit and your knowledge about it.
Well, I'll go and test it in a moment. So if I go and have like 10 losses in the day, I fall into all these mistakes that I've been talking about, I'll be very disappointed in myself, to be honest. But no, I mean, in all honesty, with chess, I really want to learn. It's so frustrating because I've got a chess book right next to me, but I put so much study into it off stream, and I just feel I'm getting nowhere because I got 1,000 elo after 150 games and whatever study I did, and now I'm on just under 400 games and I'm still on 1,000 elo. So 250 games I feel is just wasted because I don't think I've improved at all. So it's kind of like, if I can put what you've taught me today into play, and I can the stuff can just start clicking for me, it'd be brilliant.
Yeah, that would be absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please don't forget to leave a big thumbs up and also to subscribe. If you ever want to catch me live, go ahead and go to twitch.tv/AnnaCramling. Hope to see you there.